The final fine totals $50,000. The HOA president, a woman named Karen, said it with a smug smile. She was standing in front of the entire community, pointing at me like I was a criminal. She thought she had me. She thought she was just one signature away from foreclosing on my home. She had no idea I let it get this far. She had no idea that while she was busy fining me $100 a day for my first responder flags, I was just waiting. She thought I was ignoring her threats. I was building my case. And she really had no idea who she was messing with. My name is David Sloan. I'm a 30-year veteran of law enforcement. And I was about to introduce this entire corrupt board to a brand new state law that would not only make her $50,000 claim vanish, but would make her the one facing fines. Lady, you have absolutely no clue what you just started. What would you do if an HOA tried to fine you for supporting police and firefighters? Drop a flag emoji in the comments. Let me back up and tell you how a few simple flags started a $50,000 war with the wrong retired cop. After 30 years on the force, I thought retirement meant sleeping past sunrise and smelling fresh coffee, not gunpowder. My wife and I bought our forever home in the Cypress Creek Estates. Picture perfect lawns, the kind of neighborhood where the only sound is the hiss of sprinklers. The smell of fresh mulch and new beginnings filled the air. That peace lasted exactly 3 days. Enter Karen, the self-elected queen of the suburbs. She runs the HOA like a protection racket, carrying a clipboard thick enough to stop a bullet. The overwhelming smell of her floral perfume announces her arrival like a warning siren. She appeared on my lawn with a violation notice already printed. "Welcome to Cypress Creek," she chirped, her smile so fake it could be Exhibit A in a fraud trial. Just a tiny violation to address. My crime? Planting a thin blue line flag in my own flower bed. A flag I fly for my partner, Mark, who didn't make it to retirement. That flag is a political modification and is not approved, she explained, pointing to some microscopic text in her rulebook. It's $100. And $100 for every day it remains. I told her, calmly, that it wasn't a political statement. It was a memorial. She didn't care. That's when the second flag went up. The thin red line, for my brother, the firefighter. And that is when the war began. The fines started stacking up like firewood. $100, $1,000, $10,000. She thought I was just some old man she could bully. She didn't know I was collecting her violation notices like evidence. While she was busy playing dictator, I was busy reading. And I found something she'd never seen. A brand new state law, a homeowner pushback bill that had just been signed. A law that made her actions, her fines, and her threats completely and totally illegal. She was building her $50,000 case against me, not knowing I was building a state-level case against her. She just picked the wrong neighborhood to terrorize. The very next day, the war of attrition began. It started not with a bang, but with a piece of paper. The first official fine, $100, was taped to my front door. Not placed in the mailbox, which would be a federal offense, but taped right over the peephole. A clear power move. I peeled it off, the tape leaving a sticky residue on the glass, and read the generic, passive-aggressive language. Violation, unapproved signage, Sector 4, Para. 2. Political modification. I almost had to laugh. Political modification. I was a cop for 30 years. I know what a political statement is. Honoring my partner Mark, who took 2 bullets for me, isn't politics. It's a debt. I walked to my new desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a fresh manila file folder. With a black Sharpie, I wrote HOA nonsense on the tab. I placed the fine inside. That file would get a lot thicker over the next few months. A week later, there were 7 notices in that file. Karen, it seemed, was punctual. Every morning, like clockwork, I'd hear the click-click-click of her heels on the sidewalk, followed by the rip of the tape. She never knocked. She never tried to speak with me again. She was just a ghost who left invoices. By the end of the first month, the total in the file was $3,000. This is where they expect you to panic. They expect a frantic phone call, a desperate offer to make it right. They want you to be emotional. They feed on it. I, on the other hand, just made coffee. I spent that time doing what I do best, research. I got a copy of the full HOA covenants and read all 200 pages. And I found Section 4, Paragraph 2. It was a masterpiece of terrible legal writing, a vague catch-all phrase that said, no signage, banners, or displays of a political, commercial, or otherwise unapproved nature shall be erected. The key words, of course, were unapproved nature. Approved by who? By her? It was a clause written specifically to give one person, Karen, the absolute power to decide what looked nice. And that's when I knew her entire case was built on sand. But I went deeper. I started looking at state statutes. And that's when I found it. The needle in the haystack. House Bill 1057. A brand new law, signed by the governor just 6 months ago, before I even bought the house. It was a homeowner's rights bill, and it had a specific, beautiful, ironclad section on flags. It stated, clear as day, that no HOA could prohibit the respectful display of flags honoring United States military personnel, veterans, or first responders. My heart didn't pound. My breathing didn't quicken. I just felt that cold, clear-headed calm you get when you know with 100% certainty that you have the winning hand. I printed out 3 copies of the law. One for my file, one for my lawyer, and one for the hearing I knew was coming. Meanwhile, Karen was getting frustrated by my silence. The fines hit $10,000. The notices taped to my door started getting more aggressive. The font changed. Final notice was now printed in bright red ink. She was escalating. She was probably furious that I wasn't begging for her forgiveness at the monthly board meeting. Then she made her next move. She sent a friend. One of the other board members, a nervous-looking man named Gary, happened to be walking his dog just as I was getting the mail. You know, David, he said, avoiding eye contact, it would be a lot easier if you just took the flags down. She's not going to stop. I looked at him, then at the final notice in my hand. Easier for who, Gary? I asked calmly. I'm not the one breaking the law. His face went pale. He tugged on his dog's leash and scurried away. The message was sent. 2 weeks later, the $20,000 mark was hit. And that's when the first letter from the HOA's law firm arrived. It was no longer a piece of tape on my door. It was a certified letter full of threatening legal language, talking about liens and further legal action. This was it. She was taking the bait. She was actually paying lawyers to build a case against her. I signed the certified mail receipt, smiled at the mailman, and placed the new, much more expensive-looking letter right on top of the stack in my HOA nonsense file. That thick, cream-colored envelope from their lawyers marked a change in the air. The war was no longer just between me and Karen. She had officially spent homeowner dues to bring in the guns. I knew their next move would be the big one, and I knew it would be expensive on their part. All I had to do was wait. And so I did. The daily $100 fines didn't stop. The pieces of tape on my door were replaced by more certified letters, which I dutifully signed for and added to the top of the pile. My HOA nonsense file was now splitting at the seams, a novel of one-sided, passive-aggressive threats. The total climbed past $30,000, then $40,000. It was a ridiculous, imaginary number like something from a board game, but the threat behind it was very real. They were building their case to prove I was an uncooperative homeowner who was damaging the community's property values. I, on the other hand, was just biding my time, watching the snow-white pages of the new state statute turn a comfortable, aged yellow on my desk. I had it memorized. I knew it better than their own lawyers, and I was counting on that. The point of no return didn't happen on a dark and stormy night. It happened on a beautiful, sunny Tuesday. I was out front, trimming the hedges, enjoying the feeling of retirement. My wife was inside, baking. It was the very picture of the peace we had moved here for. A nondescript sedan pulled up to the curb. Not a police car, not a mail truck. A man in a cheap suit got out, holding a thick 9 by 12-inch packet. He wasn't Karen, and he wasn't Gary. He looked bored. I knew exactly who he was. He was a process server. I put down the shears and wiped my hands on my jeans. "David Sloan?" he asked, his voice monotone. "That's me," I said, giving him a polite nod. "You've been served," he said. He handed me the packet. No ceremony. No malice. He was just a delivery guy for bad news. He had me sign his clipboard, tore off a proof of service, got back in his car, and drove away. I stood there on my perfect lawn, under the blue sky, holding the packet. It was heavy. This wasn't a threat. This wasn't a fine. This was the lawsuit. This was the lease pendens, an official notice of foreclosure. This was the formal, legal, irreversible action of them trying to take my home. This was the moment Karen had officially crossed the line from a neighborhood bully into a full-blown criminal, in my eyes. She was using the legal system to try and steal a man's house, all because she didn't like his flags. I looked across the street toward her house, and there she was, Karen. She was standing in her bay window, partially hidden by the curtains, but I could see her. I could see the glint of her glasses. She was watching. She was waiting to see me panic, to see me yell, to see my wife run out in tears. I could practically feel the smug, toxic satisfaction rolling off her house. This was her victory lap. I simply turned my back to her and walked inside. My wife saw the packet in my hand and her face immediately fell. "Oh, David, what is it? Is it what we think it is?" I put the packet on the kitchen counter. "It is," I said. "They filed. They're officially suing us to foreclose." She put her hand over her mouth. "Foreclose? Over flags? How is this possible? What are we going to do?" I looked at her, and I put my hands on her shoulders. "We," I said, "are going to do exactly what I've been planning for." She did it, honey. She finally did it. This wasn't a moment of defeat. This was the starting pistol. All my life, I've known that you don't show your hand until the pot is big enough. You let the criminal get confident, you let them get sloppy, and you let them walk right into the trap you've set for them. Karen had just spent thousands of dollars in legal fees to set a trap for herself. She thought she was suing a stubborn old man. She had no idea she was suing a 30-year cop who had spent his entire career preparing for this exact kind of fight. I picked up the phone. I didn't call the HOA. I didn't call their lawyers. I called my own. "John, it's David," I said, my voice calm. "It's here. The foreclosure suit. They just served me." I could hear my lawyer, a sharp guy I'd known for 20 years, almost smile through the phone. "Oh, this is beautiful, David. This is better than I hoped. They're not just threatening, they filed. They put this in front of a judge." "They did," I said. "And you still have that copy of House Bill 1057? I looked at the piece of paper sitting on my desk. "John," I said, "I've got 3 copies, and they're all highlighted. They've just set the hearing. They have no idea what's coming." Karen thought she was dragging me to an execution. She didn't realize I was the one who had just set the date. Karen thought she was dragging me to an execution. She didn't realize I was the one who had just set the date. The weeks between being served and the actual hearing were quiet. Too quiet. It's a specific kind of silence I remember from my old job. It's the silence after the trap is set, but before the target takes the bait. My lawyer, John, filed our official response to their ridiculous foreclosure suit. It was a simple 2-page document. It didn't argue. It didn't plead. It simply stated that we rejected all their claims, that the fines were levied illegally, and that we would be seeking to have the case dismissed with prejudice. We also included a notice that we would be countersuing for all of my legal fees. We didn't, however, mention House Bill 1057. Not yet. That was the ace. You never, ever play your ace until all the money is on the table. About a week later, we got a courtesy call from the HOA's high-priced law firm. It was some junior associate, a kid who probably still had his diploma in the mailing tube. He sounded smug and offered me a one-time deal on behalf of the board. If I paid $25,000, half of the fines, and immediately removed the flags, they would graciously stop the foreclosure. I told John to tell them, respectfully, to go pound sand. The next step was discovery. This is where both sides show their cards. Their lawyers sent us a long list of demands. They wanted copies of all communication, any proof of my inability to pay, and any justification for the flags. We sent them exactly what they asked for. We gave them a perfectly organized, photocopied stack of my nonsense file. Every single fine, every threatening letter, every certified mail receipt. We also included a photograph of my partner Mark's memorial plaque and a copy of my brother's firefighter service record. Then it was our turn. We sent our discovery request. We didn't just ask about the flags. We asked for everything. We wanted the minutes from every board meeting for the last 2 years. We wanted a full accounting of how they spent homeowner dues. And my personal favorite, we demanded a full list of every fine they had issued to any homeowner in the last 24 months, for any reason. I knew, from my brief chat with Gary, that Karen was a fine, happy tyrant. I was betting her power trip wasn't limited to me. The silence from their law firm was deafening. Meanwhile, Karen's behavior in the neighborhood got worse. She was drunk on power. She thought I was a cornered animal, just weeks away from losing my home. She would walk her dog slowly past my house and just stare. She'd stop at the end of my driveway, clipboard in hand, and just look. That fake, tight smile plastered on her face. She was savoring it. She thought she had won. She didn't know that my file wasn't just about the fines anymore. It was about her. And she didn't know that on the very top of my lawyer's desk, in a clear plastic sleeve, was a single, highlighted piece of paper. The one piece of paper her entire, expensive $50,000 lawsuit completely forgot to read. We were just counting down the days. Karen thought she was dragging me to an execution. She didn't realize I was the one who had just set the date. The moment that process server's car turned the corner, my entire demeanor shifted. The confused, stubborn old man persona was gone. This was my world now. This was an investigation. The immediate fallout wasn't chaotic, it was methodical. My wife, bless her, was nervous, but she's been married to a cop for 30 years. She knows the look in my eye. She knew I had a plan. I told her, she just walked right into the trap. Now, we just have to let it spring. The first thing I did was call my lawyer, John. I told him the suit was filed. I could hear him almost smile through the phone. "Oh, this is beautiful, David," he said. "They actually did it. They put it all in writing. They've just handed us the case." See, my silence over the past few months wasn't weakness. It was an ambush. While Karen was busy taping $100 notices to my door, I was in my home office, logged into the state legislature's database. I spent hours, no days, reading every new bill, every statute, anything related to homeowners' rights. And that's when I found it, House Bill 1057, the First Responder Flag Protection Act. It was perfect. It was brand new, signed into law just 6 months ago, before I even bought the house. It was so new, it wasn't in the HOA's outdated legal binders. It wasn't on the radar of their high-priced, copy-and-paste law firm. They were operating on last year's rules. I was operating on this year's law. The law was beautiful in its simplicity. It stated, clear as day, that no homeowners association in this state could prohibit, restrict, or fine a homeowner for the respectful display of one or more flags honoring United States military personnel, veterans, or first responders. It was a silver bullet, and Karen had just handed me the gun. So, while she was building her $50,000 case, I was building my counteroffensive. My evidence wasn't just an item, it was a mountain. First, I had the HOA nonsense file, which was now 3 folders thick. I had every single fine, every threatening letter, every certified mail receipt, all organized by date. It showed a clear pattern of targeted harassment. Second, I had photographs. I had pictures of my flags, showing they were in a respectful, well-maintained flower bed. I also had photos I'd taken on my walks around the neighborhood, pictures of other violations, unauthorized garden gnomes, unapproved driveway basketball hoops, mailboxes painted the wrong shade of beige, all of which were completely ignored by Karen. This proved her enforcement wasn't about the rules, it was a personal vendetta against me. And third, I had my kill shot. 3 pristine, highlighted copies of House Bill 1057. When John filed our official response to their lawsuit, it was a work of art. It was simple, polite, and absolutely brutal. We didn't argue about the fines. We just stated that all claims were rejected, that the fines were levied illegally and in bad faith, and that we would be countersuing for all of my legal fees, plus damages for harassment. We did not, however, mention House Bill 1057. That was the ace up my sleeve. You don't show the other side your ace until all the money is on the table. You let them get confident. You let them double down. And oh, did they double down? About a week later, we got the courtesy call. It was from some junior associate at their law firm, a kid who sounded like his suit was still being paid for by his parents. He was all smooth, smug confidence. "Mr. Sloan," he said to my lawyer, "the board wants to be generous. They're willing to offer a one-time settlement. If your client pays just $25,000, that's half a very generous offer and removes the items from his yard, the board will agree to drop the foreclosure." I had John on speakerphone. Just shook my head. John relayed the message. "We respectfully decline. In fact, you should probably tell your client to read the new state statutes before this goes any further. It might save them some embarrassment." There was a pause on the other end. What statutes?" the kid asked. "Have a nice day," John said and hung up. The next step was discovery. They sent us a long list of demands, and we sent them everything. We buried them in copies of my files, in photos, in service records for my partner Mark. Then it was our turn. We didn't just ask about the flags. We demanded everything. All board meeting minutes for 2 years. All internal emails that mention my name or my property. A full accounting of their legal expenditures. And my favorite, a complete list of every fine issued to any homeowner for the last 24 months. I wanted to prove, in court, that I was the only one she was after. The silence we got back was deafening. They were in a panic. They had just walked into a buzzsaw. But Karen, she was too arrogant to see it. She thought my countersuit was a bluff. She thought I was just a stubborn old man flailing. I'd see her walking her dog, and she'd stop at the end of my driveway and just stare. That tight, fake smile plastered on her face, like she was savoring what she thought was her inevitable victory. She had no idea. She thought this was a hearing about her rules. I was about to make it a trial about state law. And she was the one who was about to be judged. His mouth opened slightly. He looked up at John. He looked at the judge. He looked back at the paper. He looked like a man who had just been told the building was on fire. "Your Honor," John continued, his voice cutting through the silence, "the law is very clear. I'll read the relevant line, Section 2A. Notwithstanding any provision in a homeowners association's covenants, no homeowners association shall prohibit, restrict, or fine a homeowner for the respectful display of one or more flags honoring United States military personnel, veterans, or first responders." Karen, sitting behind him, didn't understand. She was furiously whispering, her voice carrying across the room, "What is that? Tell him about the bylaws. The bylaws say." Henderson, still pale, stood up on wobbly legs. He was shuffling his own useless papers. Your Honor, this is, we were unaware of this statute. Unaware. The judge's voice was ice. She took off her glasses. You were unaware of state law, Mr. Henderson? You, who are standing here trying to make a man homeless over a flag honoring his fallen partner, you were unaware of the law. But the covenants, Karen blurted out. She just couldn't help herself. Silence, the judge roared. Karen froze, her mouth open. One more word from you, madam, and I will have you removed for contempt of court. Karen's face turned that deep, blotchy, beet red I had been waiting months to see. Her knuckles were white, gripping the strap of her purse. The judge turned her full attention back to the lawyer, Henderson, who looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Let me be perfectly clear, counselor, so that even you can understand. State law trumps your petty HOA bylaws. Single. This law, which you were unaware of, makes your entire case, your binder, your $50,000 in fines, null, void, and illegal. She looked at me. Mr. Sloan, you are, and have been, well within your rights to display those flags. I thank you for your service, and for that of your fallen colleagues. Then she looked back at them. The fire in her eyes was incredible. This case is dismissed with prejudice. The lien on Mr. Sloan's property is voided. All fines are illegal and are hereby nullified, effective immediately. It was over. Just like that. But she wasn't done. Furthermore, the judge said, her eyes still locked on Henderson, I am ordering the Cypress Creek HOA to pay all of Mr. Sloan's legal fees. And I am strongly considering reporting you, Mr. Henderson, to the State Bar for gross incompetence and malicious prosecution. You have wasted this court's valuable time. We are adjourned. The judge stood and swept out of the room. Henderson just collapsed into his chair. He didn't say a word. He just stared into space, his career flashing before his eyes. And Karen? Oh, Karen was a sight. She was sputtering. Her face was a mask of pure, uncomprehending rage. This isn't, you can't. Our rules, she was hissing, to no one in particular. My wife had tears in her eyes. She was squeezing my hand so hard I thought she'd break it. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and looked over at Karen. I gave her a small, polite nod. And then I walked out of the courtroom, a free man. And then I walked out of the courtroom, a free man. The air in the hallway felt 20 degrees cooler, and I could breathe all the way to the bottom of my lungs for the first time in months. My wife and I didn't say a word. We just walked, hand in hand, past the elevators and out the big glass doors into the sunshine. The sounds from the courtroom, of Karen sputtering, but our rules, and her lawyer trying to repack his useless binders, faded away until there was nothing but the sound of the breeze and the distant traffic. That victory in the courtroom was the end of the battle. The war, however, had one last beautiful chapter. About a week later, my lawyer John called me. He sounded cheerful. Well, David, he said, I've just sent my final invoice. Great, John, I said. Send it over. I've never been happier to pay a bill in my life. John laughed. Oh no, he said. This bill isn't for you. It's for the Cypress Creek HOA, as ordered by the judge. He sent me a copy for my records. It was beautiful. It detailed every minute, every research hour, every filing fee. But the best part was the total at the bottom. The HOA, for the privilege of suing me and losing, now owed me tens of thousands of dollars for my legal defense. But it gets better, because their lawyer, Mr. I'm unaware of state law, also had to send the HOA a bill. A massive one. He had to charge them for all those binders, all those poster boards, and all the time he spent building a $50,000 case on a foundation of sand. All told, Karen's personal vendetta against my flags, her little power trip, cost the other homeowners in our community well over $75,000 in legal fees. All of it just wasted. And that is when the new reality set in. The news of that bill spread through the neighborhood like a wildfire. Suddenly, all the other homeowners, the ones who had kept their heads down, the ones who didn't want to get involved, understood. They realized their dues, their money, had been set on fire by Karen to fund her personal, illegal crusade. An emergency HOA meeting was called. I didn't even have to go. My neighbors, Gary included, told me all about it. It was a bloodbath. Karen, still wearing her power blazer, tried to use her gavel. She tried to tell them I was the one who had cost them this money. But they weren't having it. People were standing up, shouting, waving copies of the legal bills. They were furious. They demanded to know why she had been allowed to do this, why she hadn't listened to anyone, and why she had ignored a clear state law. A motion was made. A vote of no confidence. It was immediate and it was unanimous. Karen was stripped of her title, of her presidency, of her little clipboard of power, right there in the community rec room. I heard she didn't even stay for the rest of the meeting. Her reign was over. And my life? It's exactly what I wanted. It's peaceful. I wake up, I drink my coffee, and I sit on my front porch. The air smells like fresh-cut grass and new beginnings. My flags, they're still flying. The thin blue line, for Mark. The thin red line, for my brother. They fly freely, and every time I see them, I'm reminded of something. Bullies like Karen, whether they're on a playground or on an HOA board, only have the power you give them. They count on you being ignorant. They count on you being intimidated. The best defense isn't to yell or to fight them on their level. The best defense is to be right, to do your research, to know the law, and to let them get so tangled up in their own arrogance that they walk right into the trap you've calmly and patiently set for them. Thanks for listening to my story. I'm curious, what's the single craziest HOA rule you've ever had to deal with? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.